Keanu Reeves hired a new housekeeper for his villa. He had no idea she was homeless, living out of her car, fighting to survive the winter. But once he uncovered the truth, what he did next not only stunned her, it shook the world. Suddenly, people everywhere began to question what they really knew about celebrities like him. So who was this woman? And what had she been through before fate led her to Keanu's doorstep? The freezing December air cut through the thin shell of an old sedan parked in a quiet alley. Frost patterns traced across the windows like delicate artwork. Inside, beneath a worn-out blanket, a young woman stirred from a restless sleep. Her name was Anna. She was 25 years old. And this was her home. She never imagined life would take this turn, sleeping in a car, wrapped in a blanket that barely held in any warmth. But for the past 6 months, this alley had been her safe spot, hidden behind a fancy bistro called the Golden Fork. Every day was a fight to survive. Every night, a battle against the cold. Anna sat up slowly, her muscles aching from another night in the cramped back seat. She reached for her most treasured item, a chipped melamine plate she'd rescued from the trash. It wasn't much, but it reminded her of dignity, of a life where meals were served at tables, not eaten beside dumpsters. Inside her car, she'd done her best to create order. Neatly folded clothes on the passenger seat. A few essentials lined up in the back. Everything had a place, even in this tiny mobile world. She'd worn the same outfit for 5 days now. The fabric stiff with grime. But she still wrapped the blanket around her like a coat, stepped out into the snow, and made her way to the back entrance of the bistro. The kitchen hand was there, as always. He didn't say much, he never did, but his quiet nod and the carefully placed garbage bag on the ground were their unspoken ritual. He could have tossed it straight into the bin, but he didn't. And that simple act of kindness? It meant more to Anna than any hot fire ever could. She crouched down, her hands trembling from the cold, and opened the bag. She knew the timing, after breakfast prep was best. And today? She was lucky. Pastries that didn't meet the restaurant's standards. Fresh vegetables, still crisp. She laid them out on her chipped plate like a chef plating a 5-star dish. Dignity, even now, mattered. As she ate, her mind drifted. Losing her job. Her mom's death. The eviction. Each step had led her here. But even in the depths of this alley, she held on to hope that someday she'd make it out. After finishing her meal, Anna wiped her plate clean with the sleeve of her coat. She dug deeper into the trash bag, reaching for something far more valuable than food, her phone. Every night, the kitchen hand charged it inside the warm kitchen and hid it among the trash for her to find. It was her lifeline, the last connection to the world she once knew. She cleaned the screen with a corner of her blanket, powered it on, and walked back toward her car, scrolling through notifications, her heart suddenly racing when she saw what had come in overnight. When Anna saw the message on her phone, her heart skipped a beat. It was from the Maid agency she'd signed up with 6 months ago, a lifeline that had, on rare occasions, offered her just enough work to keep going. The message had come in overnight, offering her a weekend job at a private address. It wasn't just any job, it was a chance. A chance to work again. A chance to feel like herself. The message said she needed to arrive in full uniform. And just like that, a spark of hope flickered in her chest. Back at her car, Anna popped the trunk and stared at the one thing she'd protected above all else, her neatly pressed Maid uniform, still wrapped in plastic. It was spotless, almost sacred. The last remaining symbol of the life she once had. She'd taken every possible step to keep it clean, and just last week, the kind kitchen hand had helped her wash it, without asking why. As she peeled back the plastic, the scent of detergent hit her, fresh, sterile, clean. It belonged to a world that no longer felt like hers, a world of order and dignity. Still, she held it close, as if touching the past might help her reclaim the future. Changing inside the cramped car wasn't easy, but she did it. The crisp fabric against her skin felt foreign after days of wearing the same stained clothes. She checked the mirror, tied her hair back, straightened her collar. And then her eyes drifted to the fuel gauge. Empty. The needle didn't lie. She didn't have enough gas to get there. Her mind raced, gas or groceries? Gas or her mom's medicine? She hesitated. And then she made her decision. She would walk. The address wasn't too far, and she had time. Every dollar saved mattered, especially when her mother's treatment was still unfinished. Locking the car, Anna whispered a quiet promise to herself, "When I get paid, I'll fill the tank." No matter what. She walked with purpose, the winter wind biting at her cheeks, her thoughts locked on the job ahead. Every step away from the alley felt like a step closer to hope, a step closer to becoming the woman she used to be. And even though she knew better than to dream too big, she couldn't help it. Maybe this job would turn into something more. Maybe it was the start of everything changing. When she finally arrived at the address, she froze in place. Before her stood a grand villa, elegant, majestic, the kind of place you only see in movies. Her breath caught. It was nothing like the alley behind the Golden Fork. This wasn't just a job, it was another world entirely. Anna straightened her uniform, took a deep breath, and approached the gate. That's when a security guard noticed her. "Staff entrance is around back," he said, barely making eye contact. She nodded quietly. "Thank you." Around the side of the villa, the scene changed again, a flurry of maids in pristine uniforms moving with practiced rhythm. Anna hesitated, suddenly hyper-aware of her shoes, her hair, the faint scent of life on the streets that even detergent couldn't mask. "You there?" A voice sliced through the air. Anna turned. A tall man strode toward her, every inch of him stiff with authority. "I'm Gordon Carfield. Supervisor. You must be the new temp." His eyes scanned her, from her frayed shoes to her tired face. He didn't bother hiding the look of distaste. "You can't work like this," he said bluntly. Then, turning to one of the maids nearby, "Get me body wash. Shampoo." A bottle was thrown his way. Without missing a beat, he thrust them into Anna's hands. "Shower. Now. Wash your hair, dry it, and tie it back properly under your cap. You have 15 minutes. Anna froze. The other maids looked away, pretending not to hear. Her cheeks burned with shame, a public scolding after a long, freezing walk. But underneath the embarrassment, there was something else. Gratitude. A proper shower? She hadn't had one in months. "Well?" 14 minutes, Gordon barked. Anna hurried off, gripping the bottles like treasure. The warmth of the water hit her skin and she almost collapsed. It was too much, too good. As she scrubbed away weeks of dirt, tears mingled with the water on her face. She didn't cry because she was ashamed. She cried because, for the first time in a long time, she felt human again. She washed her hair twice. Not because she had to, but because she could. The feeling of being clean again was overwhelming. For the first time in months, the person staring back at Anna from the mirror looked like her, not the version that had been hardened by cold nights and alleyways. Exactly 15 minutes later, Anna stepped out of the staff bathroom with her hair neatly tucked under her cap, her cheeks still flushed from the hot water. She slipped quietly into line with the other maids just as Gordon began the morning briefing. "Listen up," he barked. "We've got 2 events today. First, a luncheon, guests arrive in a few hours. Then tonight, a high-profile networking event. I expect nothing less than perfection." His eyes snapped to Anna. "You, the new temp, you'll be sweeping the backyard and clearing the pool. Simple work. But important. Don't screw it up." Anna nodded firmly. She didn't care if it was sweeping leaves or scrubbing tiles. This job meant one thing to her: hope. Hope for her mother. Hope for herself. And she was going to give it everything. She collected her tools, a garden broom and a pool skimmer, from the supply closet and stepped into the backyard. What she saw nearly stopped her breath. The lawn was a postcard. The pool shimmered in the pale winter sun. The patio furniture looked like something out of a catalog. It was a universe away from the alley behind the Golden Fork. She got to work, brushing the patio with slow, careful strokes. Every leaf she swept away, every corner she cleared, felt like a small act of dignity. She might be homeless. She might be struggling. But right now, in this moment, she was just a worker doing her job. And that felt like something to be proud of. As she moved to the pool, the wind picked up, brushing icy fingers across the water. She dipped the skimmer net in, dragging it slowly across the surface, collecting petals and leaves. It was quiet work, almost meditative. The kind of peace you don't notice until you realize you haven't had it in forever. And then, something caught her eye. A shimmer. At the bottom of the pool, near the deep end, a metallic glint, too smooth, too perfect to be a leaf or a wrapper. Anna squinted. It looked like jewelry. Her heart began to race. If it was something valuable, and she returned it, maybe this job wouldn't just be a one-time gig. Maybe it would prove she was honest. Reliable. Someone worth keeping. She tried using the skimmer to scoop it up, but the current only pushed the object further away. Swimming was out of the question, not just because of the cold, but because one soaking wet Maid uniform could cost her the entire opportunity. She stood still, brain buzzing. Then turned on her heel and rushed back to the supply closet. Her eyes scanned the shelves. Telescopic hook. Pool brush. Perfect. Back at the pool's edge, she extended the brush, slowly guiding the object across the floor of the pool, inch by inch, trying not to stir the water too much. One wrong move and it could slide out of reach. When it was close enough, she dropped the brush and picked up the hook. With trembling hands, she lowered it into the water. Seconds felt like hours. Her breath caught as the hook snagged on something solid. She lifted, slowly, carefully, and there it was. A bracelet. Dripping water. Gleaming in the sun. She held it in her palm, stunned by its beauty. It wasn't just valuable, it was personal. Elegant. Real gold. As she turned it over, she noticed something engraved inside. A name. Keanu Reeves. Anna froze. Wait. Keanu Reeves? The Keanu Reeves? Her heart pounded so hard it echoed in her ears. She looked back at the house, the stunning villa, the luxury, the privacy. She was working for him? It felt unreal. Surreal. Like the kind of twist that only happened in movies. But she wasn't in a movie. She was standing poolside, holding a piece of Keanu Reeves' jewelry in her hand, wondering how on earth she was going to hand it back to a man the entire world adored. And more importantly, how he was going to react when he found out who she really was. The name Keanu Reeves still echoed in her head as the bracelet lay heavy in her palm, her fingers trembling. What if someone thought she was trying to steal it? What if handing it in only made her look suspicious? She shook off the fear. No. She wasn't going to let this moment be defined by doubt. She'd found something valuable, something personal, and she was going to do the right thing. With steady hands, she pulled a napkin from her uniform pocket and gently polished the bracelet until it shimmered in the sunlight. She clutched it tightly, took one final breath, and walked toward the house. Her shoes crunched softly on the stone path. Her mind raced. This could change everything, she thought. A chance to prove I'm more than what life has reduced me to. Or it could go the other way fast. As she stepped into the villa, the air inside felt cooler, quieter, almost sacred. Her eyes adjusted to the soft lighting, and the contrast from the bright winter sun made her feel like she was walking into another world. Every detail around her screamed wealth, the art, the polished floors, the way the silence seemed to hold weight. She didn't know where to go. She couldn't just leave the bracelet on the dining table or set it down on a counter. What if someone else found it? What if it disappeared? The risk was too high. The safest place was the master bedroom. If she couldn't find Keanu himself, she could at least leave the bracelet somewhere secure. Her heart thudded louder with every step up the staircase. The hallway was empty. door after door, guest rooms, a library, a home office, until finally, at the end of the hall, she found a larger door, slightly ajar. She opened it and instantly froze. There, standing in front of her, buttoning up a crisp white shirt, was him. Keanu Reeves. The real one. The man whose name was engraved inside the bracelet now shaking in her hand. Their eyes locked, his, startled. Hers, wide with panic. I'm so sorry, Anna stammered, taking a clumsy step back, nearly tripping over herself. I didn't mean to, I should have knocked. I'm so sorry, Mr. Reeves. Her voice tumbled out in a rush. Her face burned. Her mind was spinning through every consequence. Would she be fired on the spot? Would the agency cut her off? How would she pay for her mom's treatment now? But then, something unexpected happened. Keanu didn't yell. He didn't scold. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, kind. It's all right, he said gently. Take a breath. Tell me why you're here. Anna's hands were trembling as she held out the bracelet. I found this in the pool, she whispered. I just wanted to make sure it got back to you safely. Keanu stepped forward. His eyes softened the moment he saw the piece of jewelry. I've been looking for this, he said, genuine emotion filling his voice. I thought it was gone. For good. He reached out and took it from her hands, but carefully, almost reverently. This was a gift from my mother. It means a lot to me. The way he said it, the weight in those few words, broke something in Anna. All the anxiety and panic that had been clutching at her chest started to loosen. She could finally breathe. I'm glad I could return it to you, she said softly, a small smile tugging at her lips. And then, without even thinking, the words spilled out. I understand how important things like this can be. My mom has a few pieces of jewelry too. From her grandmother. They're not worth anything, but they mean the world to her. As soon as she said it, Anna regretted it. She was speaking too personally, too casually. This was Keanu Reeves, not someone you opened up to. Her cheeks turned red. I'm sorry, she said, stepping back quickly. I should get back to work. But before she could leave, his voice stopped her. Wait, Keanu said gently. You don't have to go. We can keep talking if you want. Anna hesitated in the doorway, torn between the comfort of kindness and the fear of overstepping. Thank you, Mr. Reeves, she said, her voice quiet. But I really should get back to my duties. I'm sorry again for the interruption. And with that, she turned and walked away, her steps quick, her thoughts spinning. But this time, they weren't filled with panic. They were filled with something else. Relief. Gratitude. Maybe even possibility. Her palms were still damp, her heart still pounding, and her cheeks still flushed, not from the cold, but from the rush of returning Keanu Reeves' bracelet. The embarrassment of her unannounced entry into his room clung to her, but so did something else, the warmth of his unexpected kindness. Anna stepped back into the crisp air of the backyard, determined to shake off the moment and throw herself into her work. She grabbed her tools where she'd left them and began sweeping the patio with focused, deliberate movements. Every leaf, every trace of dirt, every piece of debris became her target, something she could control, something she could claim. The simple rhythm of work brought her peace. There was no time for daydreaming. No time for fear. She had a job to do, and maybe, just maybe, she could prove that she was more than a temp, more than a girl from an alley behind a restaurant. She swept the porch until not a single crumb or speck of dust remained. Then she moved to the garden, collecting leaves and trash into a garbage bag, tying it tightly, and hauling it outside. The physical exertion grounded her. Cleaning chaos into calm gave her back a tiny piece of control in a life that had offered so little of it lately. By the time she finished, the sun was nearly overhead. Her stomach growled. Loudly. She hadn't eaten anything since her modest breakfast of discarded pastries, and that had been hours ago. But she pushed the hunger aside. It was almost noon. She had to report in. She found Gordon in the kitchen, arms folded, barking orders at the kitchen staff like a drill sergeant in a war zone. "Excuse me, Mr. Carfield," Anna said, quietly but clearly. "I finished the backyard and pool." Gordon glanced at his watch. 11 a.m. fine. "Early lunch break," he said, his tone clipped. "But remember, you're temporary staff. You bring your own food. Unlike the full-timers." Anna's stomach twisted, not just with hunger but with dread. I didn't bring anything," she admitted. "I'm sorry." Gordon exhaled in annoyance. "Didn't you read the message properly?" he snapped. "It clearly said meals are not provided." "Fine. You've got 40 minutes. Go buy something, but be back on time. I need you covering the others later." He turned back to the kitchen without another word. Anna stood frozen. 40 minutes. No food. No money. She quietly stepped outside, heart sinking. There were no budget-friendly shops nearby. Even if there were, she couldn't afford a single item on the menu. Then her eyes drifted toward the one place that still held a desperate hope, the alley behind the Golden Fork. The same alley she had left that very morning, full of hope, full of pride, clean and ready for a new start. Now, she was heading back, for food from a dumpster. The irony stung like frostbite. With every step, her shame grew heavier. But she had no choice. If she didn't eat, she wouldn't make it through the rest of the shift. Her mother's medical bills still loomed. Quitting wasn't an option. When she reached the bins behind the bistro, she braced herself. She chose the bag the kitchen hand usually used, trying to be quick, quiet, careful, but as soon as she touched it, disaster struck. The overfilled bag split open. A wave of putrid liquid exploded, splattering her uniform, soaking through the fabric, and unleashing a stench so vile it made her gag. She stumbled back with a cry of horror, but it was too late. Her one pristine uniform, the one she had protected like treasure, was ruined. Panic clutched her throat. The stains were immediate. The smell was unbearable. Her 40-minute break was slipping away, and now she couldn't even show her face back at the villa without reeking of trash. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not now. With shaking hands, she wiped at the mess using old napkins she found nearby. It was useless. The smell clung to her skin. The stains had already set. But she had no time left. She had to go back. Her feet moved faster than her thoughts, carrying her back to the villa, heart hammering against her ribs. She rehearsed excuses in her head, each one sounding more desperate than the last. I fell. I spilled something. I slipped in the street. None of them felt believable. She just had to get inside. Maybe if she slipped through the back quietly, she could clean up, change, fix it somehow. But then, as she turned the corner toward the villa's entrance, she froze. A line of luxury cars had just pulled in. A group of elegantly dressed guests was walking up the driveway, laughing, chatting, carrying gift bags and coats and bottles of wine. The first event of the day was beginning. And there stood Anna, covered in garbage, smelling like rot, with no escape. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't hide. She couldn't turn around. This was it. The moment where everything she had worked for, everything she had hoped, was about to fall apart. During a high-profile event, Anna, a temp maid, was spotted by guests wearing a stained uniform and smelling of trash after a food search in an alley went wrong. Shocked and embarrassed, she became the center of unwanted attention. As the guests recoiled, Keanu Reeves appeared, calmly diffused the tension, and asked his staff to handle the issue. Moments later, Anna was publicly humiliated by her supervisor Gordon, dragged to the service area, and berated for her appearance. Forced to shower and wear an ill-fitting uniform, she returned to work, emotionally shaken but determined to do her best. Later, while quietly arranging canapes, Keanu approached her with kindness, asking what had happened. Though tempted to confess everything, Anna lied, too ashamed to reveal her homelessness and desperation. Keanu, still gentle, reminded her that mistakes happen and encouraged her to continue doing good work. Then, everything changed. Anna received a call from the hospital. Her mother needed emergency surgery. Without hesitation, Anna abandoned her post and rushed to be by her mother's side, knowing it could cost her the job. The operation was successful, but the medical bills were devastating. Moments later, Gordon called and furiously fired her. Later that day, as Anna returned to the Golden Fork Alley for food, she was unexpectedly confronted by Keanu Reeves, who had just arrived in his car. Seeing Anna digging through trash, clutching a chipped plate, Keanu realized the truth: she was homeless. Overwhelmed, Anna broke down and confessed everything: her mother's illness, the medical bills, and why she hid it all. Instead of judging her, Keanu responded with compassion. He took her in his car and, during the drive, opened up about losing his sister to leukemia, a pain he deeply understood. Back at the villa, he offered Anna a lifeline. She would now work directly for him with full pay, and his cancer charity would cover her mother's treatment. Keanu also fired the agency and put his trusted butler, Micah, in charge. Micah trained Anna with patience and care, and she embraced her duties with newfound purpose. That evening, she worked the event with quiet grace and strength, earning approving smiles from Keanu. At the end of the night, Keanu approached her and told her she had done a wonderful job. He promised to visit her mother with her the next day. For the first time in a long while, Anna felt hope, real, steady hope, and silently vowed to honor this second chance with everything she had.